What is up, everybody, and welcome to today's video. So you guys have probably seen the title at this point, and no, it is not clickbait. This Dodge Dakota with the 5.9 liter RT engine, V8 supercharged, is no longer good. Yes, it is true. This engine, the 5.9 liter 360 Magnum engine, is done. So you guys probably saw the video yesterday. All right, guys, she's a little more rowdy than before. You ready? So the truck was running good, best it's ever run. And usually if you guys have modified vehicles or anything before, you know that usually that's when sometimes things can go wrong. So anyways, I was returning back and this is what I saw on the dash. So as you can see on the dash, the oil pressure kept going from about the middle of the gauge, and then it kept going all the way to zero, and it kept coming back and forth, and I was trying to identify when it was, but I mean, it was probably running for maybe a total of 2 minutes like that. And I noticed that what it was doing was when the RPM was all the way down around idle, the oil pressure wasn't building. It was sitting at zero, or where you guys saw it. And then if I would rev the engine a little bit, it would come back up to the other position that you guys saw it. And the check gauges logo would go out on the dash, or light. So what happened was brought the vehicle back, started checking some things, pulled the dipstick, of course, to make sure there's still oil in it, that we didn't somehow lose oil. Oil was up, oil was good, but I noticed a bit of glitter on the dipstick. So engine still sounds good. Even right now, the engine sounds good if we were to fire it up. There's no oil in it right now, so we wouldn't be able to do that. But I mean, it sounds perfectly fine. There's no knocking. And what ended up happening, and I'm going to get into the whole thing on this video, is you guys know that we're obviously pro charged. We're running about 9 point something pounds on this vehicle. And typically in a scenario where you would hurt an engine from doing a modification such as this, you're going to end up doing something pretty severe, right? So you're going to end up maybe lifting the head, blowing a head gasket, or you might end up doing something like, breaking a ring land, which is the portion of the piston above the ring. Usually you can break that off on cast pistons, which is susceptible to that sort of damage on this vehicle if you were to push things enough. Same thing with the Viper, any of these Vipers, or even the 5.7 liter Hemi that we were turbocharged before. Breaking a ring land is a common issue since the pistons weren't designed for it. They're not forged, they're cast pistons, that sort of thing can happen. Or you could end up, breaking a rod or throwing a rod or any of those things. None of which have happened. The engine is still, the top end of the engine's fine. What we think is going on is this engine was tired. Just to give you guys a backstory on this truck, if you guys, haven't been following along, this truck was pretty much a farm truck. We don't know the history on it. The engine is actually a replacement engine from a junkyard. It has an LKQ stamp on the side of it. So I have no idea, nobody has any idea how much mileage is actually on this engine, and the history or maintenance or any maintenance records. Nobody knows. We don't know if it was ever starved of oil. We don't know what kind of oil was put in it, throughout its lifetime. We don't know whether oil changes were done, on schedule, on time, all that kind of stuff. We don't know. So to know the history of this engine is a mystery. It's 20 years old at this point, a little bit more, 21 years old this vehicle is. So who knows, right? Who knows? But like I said, there was glitter on the oil. So the next thing to do would be to drain the oil. So next course of action was to remove the oil filter. And if you guys have ever seen this before, or if you haven't, I'll explain it. A lot of times stuff that gets filtered throughout the oil a lot of times people will check the oil filter to see what kind of contaminants have worked their way into the oil filter. They'll open up the oil filter, and whatever fragments or chunks or particles that are floating around in the oil in the system will typically get stuck in the oil filter. So by inspecting the oil filter, the internals of the oil filter and the actual element in it, you can usually get a pretty good idea of, if there's something catastrophic wrong with an engine. So I went ahead and cut open the oil filter, and I'll show you guys that here. Okay guys, moment of truth. We got the tin snips, we got the oil filter. Let's cut it open. So here is what we're left with. So this is the oil filter. First, I'll show you this portion. So this is the actual element that's inside it. And once you cut that open, you can actually get inside, and this just slides out. So you can probably see, hopefully you can see in the light, all of that good glittery copper looking color along with other fragments. And even right there, you can see some chunks sitting there as well. So lots of metal material, and I'll get into what exactly some of this material is in just a second, but take a look at that. Look at just over here. Maybe I've turned on this light here, might even be better. You can see just even on the paper towel, all copper. You can see where I just let it down there. All this glittery chunk of just everything. So anywhere that you shake this off, you see more chunks. This is where it gets interesting. So take a look at this here. Look at that, you guys. That is all chunks of metal. So now that you guys see the carnage, obviously I'm not playing around. This engine is toast. So what you're seeing, and obviously we would have to tear down the engine to actually get to the bottom of it, but that copper material is actually the bearings that are typically in the bottom end of an engine. So all that copper, you're seeing the wear and tear on the bearings on the bottom end. So it might be the actual crank, the rod bearings, all that kind of stuff. And yeah. So what I wanted to say was, again, we don't know the history on this engine, and we are trying to extract as much power out of it as possible. So if you, for example, I like to use this analogy, if you were to take an engine that was already, worn in a sense, and it has play, right? So you have a crankshaft sitting there, and all of a sudden you start trying to put more power out of it, and there's already quite a bit of play or slop in those bearings. Every time you add more power and you try to get more power to turn out of that thing and twist, it's slapping a little bit more in that clearance, right? So every time we torque on that engine, it's turning a little bit more and trying to twist its way out of the block. So if there was a ton of slap in there, it was just trying to push even more against it, and wear and tear accelerated with us trying to extract more power out of it. But that has nothing to do with the tune, you guys. So I just want to make that clear. Nothing to do with the tuning on the vehicle. Tuning, like I said, if we were to blow something up catastrophically, or we lean something out, burned a piston, broke a ring land, all those kind of things, something to do with a connecting rod snapping, like detonation, those are all things to do with tuning. This is just wear and tear on a tired motor, and we accelerated that wear with trying to push as much power out of an engine that was probably already in a poor state. So you got to remember, we went from 250 horsepower from the factory to probably almost double or triple that number, right? So we probably were making an estimated, 450 wheel horsepower out of this truck, which probably would equate to maybe 500 and something or so. So in and around that number, we were making probably 500 to mid fives at the crank out of this engine, give or take, with about 10 pounds of boost. So we essentially more than doubled the horsepower that was coming out of this thing. So we probably, if you were to just buy this truck unknowingly like we did, and you went ahead and just drove it, didn't do too much to it, you probably would get quite a bit of life out of it. But again, when you start adding power to something like this and trying to extract everything out of it, if there is something is sloppy in the engine, that is just going to push against that, and it's going to move around more and more and more until it wears out the bearings and stuff like that you're seeing. So now we get into what we are going to do about this situation, you guys. So if you guys have been following along, you know that this build has been eating at me. So I want to clarify something. It's to be expected when we're trying to do a budget build. We're using used components. We're using an engine that's 20 plus years old, and you know, there's bound to be a lot of issues, right? So it's not like we're taking a vehicle that's only a couple years old, everything's pretty new, everything's pretty fresh, and you know, buying brand new parts and putting it on it. All this stuff is pretty much secondhand, all the components that we put on it. So as to be expected, you know, there would be more issues with this build. But at the same time, I swear this truck is cursed. It has not given us a break. Everything that probably could go wrong has gone wrong. And now we're in a situation where the engine is, you know, done, right? So luckily we shut it down. Nothing catastrophic happened in the sense that, you know, we could probably still reuse a lot of the parts. The crank we probably can still reuse. You know, the heads are still gonna be okay if we wanted to use those heads. All that kind of stuff, right? So the rotating assembly should be still good in it. If we were to continue driving it like this, then you would get into a situation where whatever bearing has failed the most will end up locking up, and you know, you'll end up seizing something, and obviously that would not be a good thing when the whole engine's spinning and one of the rod bearings seizes up, and then all of a sudden you have a connecting rod coming through the block. So that's probably what would happen if we continued to run it like this. I was honestly joking around with Ryan about just doing it anyways, just for fun. But we're not gonna do that, I don't think. We're gonna try to see what our best option is. So at this point, I think we're gonna probably just take a little bit of a break from this project. We've got 3 other project vehicles here as well that we're gonna get into, and I'm gonna start, you know, hunting for some parts or possible solutions. So as far as running through the possible solutions that we can have to this problem, one, we could obviously rebuild this motor, right? So it is rebuildable. We could take the engine out, rebuild it, put new bearings in it, either reuse those pistons and rods or upgrade all that stuff. So that's one option. Second option is we motor swap this thing, put something newer in there, put something more capable, put a more efficient engine in there that makes more power from the get-go, instead of starting at 250 horse and try to push this thing all the way up to our eventual goal of 700 to 1,000 horsepower. So that's where that's my personal goal for the channel, for the truck, is to get this truck between 700 and 1,000 horsepower. That way it is actually competitive. We can go to some events and actually have fun. You could have fun with a truck for a lot less than that, or a lot less power than that, but at the level that I want to go at with this truck, I really wanted to get it within that range. So to take this engine to the 700 to 1,000 horsepower mark is going to take copious amounts of money to get it there. But if we were to swap in a newer engine that's already making, you know, upwards of 500 horsepower, then you add a turbo or some sort of boost to it, then you can get there a lot sooner. Or you take something like a Hellcat swap. If we could find one for an affordable price, you put it in there, you have 707 horsepower stock, put some injectors, put a different pulley, run E85, and then we're all of a sudden, you know, closer to 1,000 horsepower mark with reliable stock, you know, power, or stock power, but components that can handle that sort of power from the factory. So those are the options, guys, but I have a ton of stuff waiting to go on this car. And I also picked up the lowering kit for this truck. So thanks again to Chad, who has actually number 10 of the commemorative edition trucks. He has number 10, and he went to a lower drop on his truck. So we picked up the old kit that he had for his truck, and it's gonna go on this one. So I'm gonna be showing you guys the install on the lowering kit. I'm also gonna order the headlights and the grill, and we're gonna do some stuff to that. But what we're gonna do is, if we can get this video to 1,000 likes, I will drop the news and build on the Viper. So I have some parts on their way. I still got to order some stuff, but I have a lot of the stuff that you guys will freak out if you know what's going on this thing. So let's get this video to 1,000 likes. I think it's obtainable, and let's work together, you guys. Let me know any comments you have on this, any questions I'll answer. If you see anything that you think would be suitable for this, let me know as well. There's a lot of swaps that would probably make people a little bit pissed off that we could put in here for cheap. Whether it's a Coyote motor or an LS swap. I'm not going to do that to you guys, I don't think, because I think a lot of people would hate me. But let me know what you guys come up with. Let me know what you guys want to see. And let's get this video to 1,000 likes, and we'll see the build on this. I'll fully disclose everything that we're doing this, the plans, the parts, all the stuff. Like I said, I've got a bunch of stuff sitting in that box over there for the Viper, so let's make it happen, you guys. Thanks again for your support. If you guys haven't already, hit that join button All of the support, you guys, helps. You guys can see how much stuff, how much projects we have on the go, and all these parts do cost money to continue the builds and continue the projects. So that's why I'm kind of telling you guys, financially, I can't really go out and just buy some $10,000 swap for this thing. It's not within my means. So if you guys can join, support the channel. We have Boosted Motorsports stickers. If you guys want, they're $5 shipped each, or click on any of the merch down below. All of your support is greatly appreciated, and everything goes back into this channel. You guys can see all the parts I'm ordering. So help out, you guys. Share this video. Let's get this channel blown up since our engine's blown up, and we'll go to the next step. We'll keep plugging away. Thanks for watching, guys. See you on the next video.